Saturn begins 2020 at around 21.5 degrees Capricorn, and it leaves for Aquarius in mid-December. Along the way, it opposes Trump's Saturn-Venus conjunction in the spring and in the fall, with the fall considerably more difficult because it'll be stationary. If you've lived long enough, Saturn cycles can be very revealing. Look back around 30 years before and remember what was happening, what you were feeling, and so on. Turns out that Trump's Saturn in 2020 is a lot like Saturn in 1990. In May of 1990, Saturn stationed in the exact degrees it will be stationing in September of 2020. And its trajectory through 1990 and into early 1991 mirrors very closely what is happening in 2020. Read Mary Trump's book and notice that she says May of 1990 was a crisis period for Donald because, following all kinds of failed business ventures, together with reckless spending in the late 80s, he was then effectively bankrupt. And by May 1990, he was apparently about $1 billion in debt, and banks were no longer willing to lend him money. Mary mentions he hated the restrictions the banks imposed, such as checking in once a week to report on his progress. The way she tells it, this period was very uncomfortable for him. The astrology describes what was happening quite accurately. Transiting Saturn was where it is today, opposing Saturn-Venus, and Uranus was touring his T-square, the one with Eris, Mercury, and Neptune. So it was not helping either. Probably made sure he slept less than usual, Uranus being famous as the Great Awakener, and therefore also the sleepless planet. Neptune and Pluto were relatively neutral, from the middle of Capricorn and Scorpio respectively, but Jupiter, his great benefactor, was really helping him out, counteracting the misfortune Saturn was heaping upon him. Jupiter was transiting over his Mercury, the ruler of two critical money houses, 2 and 11, and it was being transited by the main ruler of House 8, the House of Debt. So although the banks cut off the big loans, he was used to being floated tens to hundreds of millions, they put him on a $450,000 a month allowance. I know, totally ridiculous that an irresponsible clown would get this as punishment. But apparently the banks wanted to find a way to make at least some of their money back, and to make that possible, they couldn't totally destroy him since his name was his biggest asset and he could continue to use that to make money. Jupiter would go through Leo, Virgo, and Libra in 1991, 92, and 93, which would go a long way to prevent him being rendered penniless. It transited through his best signs from 88 to about 94, which happens to be the best swath of the zodiac for Trump, and certainly the close alignment with Mercury in 1990 really saved him. However, the 1990 May Saturn hit was actually more important than the band-aid solution Jupiter offered, because when all is said and done, the 1990s would be Trump's worst decade, and he was never able to get American money again. Astrologically, this also corresponds with Uranus and Neptune as they opposed the Saturn-Venus in the mid-1990s. It was also the birth of his shift to marketing his brand abroad, especially in Russia, where oligarchs could sense this guy could eventually prove to be a useful political tool, so they became his money source. Smart of them, don't you think? In 2020, Saturn is back where it was in 1990, but now there is no Jupiter to help out. Now there's nothing. It's all lined up against him, and all at the same time. You've heard me say this in multiple videos, and I will repeat it again. This man is toast. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Eris, all of them are piling on. Suggesting Saturn is going to help this guy win the election is laughable, and any responsible astrologer would warn this man just how perilous the situation really is. Ideas about making a great comeback in the next 3 months are completely delusional. It is far more probable that Saturn coming from the 12th and going through the 6th, opposing itself in Venus, could signal when the sickness and death that has so seriously afflicted him from the outside, via the pandemic, could actually get to him personally, as into his body. I am not joking.